In this episode of Ridiculous D&D Antics, Vin Diesel Jr. stirs up some trouble. The blacksmith looks at the suspiciously tall figure. "What kind of trade were you thinking, lad?" Vin Diesel Jr. Moonshiner pulls out his 2 crossbows and the blowgun. "I need stronger weapons. Can you make these any better, or can I trade for something?" The blacksmith looks over the items and sighs. "I could back these with harder materials, but that would make them much heavier." After some consideration, Vin shakes his head, frowning. "Are there any weapons you can suggest for me to be able to replace these then?" he asks. "What kind of weapons did you have in mind?" the blacksmith questions. Vin Diesel Jr. thinks really hard. "What do you have that you would suggest?" The blacksmith takes off his welding mask to reveal an orc face. "The customer is always right. You tell me and I'll let you know." Vin Diesel tilts his head and looks around. "Got any magic stuff?" "Depends. How much money do you have?" Vin Diesel Moonshiner grins. "Depends on what you have." Vin Diesel Jr. asks, "Do you have any amazing light crossbows?" This blacksmith is visibly getting angry, but he's trying really hard to keep his patience. He storms off for a second and comes back with a crossbow. "This is my finest work, but I don't think I like you right now." Vin Diesel tilts his head to the side. "What did I do wrong? I'm just trying to figure out what I can buy." He looks massively downtrodden and shuffles his feet pathetically. The orc huffs. "Do you want to buy something or not?" Vin Diesel scratches the back of his neck. Do you even want to sell me anything?" he asks quietly, tears in the corners of his eyes. "How much is that?" "Beautiful crossbow." Arica growls softly, poking her head out of the bag slightly and looks around with a glare, having been woken up. The blacksmith doing his best to stay calm. 100 GP. The tall cloaked man tilts his head even more and pulls out his coin purse. "What about with the helm?" he asked, and swiftly whispered something to the peach in his backpack. 90 GP, said the smith. Arica perks her tufts up and crawls out of the bag more. Out of the corner of Arica's eye she manages to see a sword with a particularly pretty jewel embedded. Vin Diesel Jr. Moonshiner beams at the orc and begins to count out the gold coins very slowly so that the blacksmith can count with him. Reaching 90, he smiles, making direct eye contact with the orc for just a few seconds too long. He then feeds Arica the 90 coins. Arica grins evilly, her sharp white fangs showing as she perks her now glowing red tufts up. Proceeds to gulp down the coins, then quickly vomit them back up at the blacksmith covered in green slime. Vin Diesel grabs the crossbow, waves, and leaves. Vin Diesel starts running. Arica glances at the jewel sword, her eyes widening. The blacksmith jumps on top of the counter, his face turning from a green color to bright red, and screams with anger as he runs after Vin Diesel. Vin Diesel Jr. Moonshiner screams out, Guards, help. This smith is a madman." "Guards." Arica blinks. "Well, that happened." Flutters in the air and nimbly floats back into the blacksmith's now abandoned shop to look at the sword. "Guards. Catch this thief," the blacksmith roars. Keen leaves the guards' barracks, wondering what all the commotion is about, but generally not concerned. Vin Diesel Jr. Moonshiner snarls, "I am no thief, I paid you fair and square." "Guard, help. I'm being swindled." "The evidence is in the shop." 90 gold, just as he asked. "Help." Schleyer hears Vin screaming but tries to keep to what he is doing. Arica lands near the sword and looks it over, sniffing it. Keen decides to stop at the tavern for some lunch and relax after training. The guards look back and forth between the two. They seem more confused than concerned. Vin Diesel Jr. Moonshiner bolts to stand in front of the guards and spins around, pointing dramatically. "This man asked for 90 gold and a magic helm in exchange for this crossbow. I paid it, and as soon as I turned to leave he came after me. Go to his shop if you do not believe me. I left everything there. This is fraud. Fraud." Xavius hears the disruption that Vin is causing, but eventually decides to go back into the inn to continue his nap. The orc tries to full football ram Vin Diesel to the ground and topples on the ground instead. Vin Diesel dances around the orc and stumbles slightly. See. He's trying to kill me. Guards, please. I'm just a visitor here trying to sell and buy, and he randomly became enraged. He gets back on his feet, determined to get Vin. The guards look at each other. Should we do something? The other one looks at him. Nah, this is the most eventful thing to happen in ages. Are you kidding? Vin Diesel Jr. sighs and darts behind the guards. Do I have permission for self-defense? Do I? If he attacks me again, can I retaliate without being in trouble? Schleyer facepaws himself and looks at the clerk, then back outside. Keen enjoys a beverage at the tavern, watching the commotion outside with amusement. The guard looks at Ben and sighs, I guess we should put a stop to this. The other one looks to the orc. Alright Bart. You've had a long day. Let's go home. Vin Diesel Jr. shouts, yeah, take your gold and go take a cold bath. The orc straight up slugs the guard to the ground, knocking him out instantly. Arica glances outside, then looks around the blacksmith, then proceeds to swallow anything shiny in sight, including trying the sword with a gem in it. The guard pulls out his sword. Damn orc, what do you think you're doing? Step aside and let me settle things with this thief. Vin Diesel Jr. howls and speeds to hide behind the other guard. I'm never coming back to this town. Letting your people run rampant and violent like this. Who is your lord? I want to see the village head. The guard stands his ground. I'm afraid I can't let you do that. I need backup here. Bart's at it again. Vin Diesel swivels to face the remaining guard. What? You want me to help you? This smith is going to crush me. I have no weapons that wouldn't potentially kill him. What did I do to deserve this treatment? I just wanted a better weapon. A few guards reluctantly walk from their posts, sighing. Ugh, again? The guards surround the orc. Alright Bart, go home. The orc puts his sword away. Keep this insect away from my shop. They aren't welcome here anymore. Vin Diesel shouts over the commotion, I wouldn't come back even if you paid me to, you rat. I'm a paying customer. Vin Diesel Jr. Moonshiner spits and turns away to leave. The orc turns around. What was that, punk? The guards hold him back. Vin Diesel turns and makes a vulgar gesture, you hear me, grape seller. The orc walks back in his shop. What is this bug doing in my workshop? For whatever reason he has a very large fly swatter. Arica shrieks, quickly fluttering into the air, a dagger in her mouth. The orc is violently swinging his fly swatter around, knocking shit off the walls. You're gonna wish you were dead, bug. Arica swallows the dagger in her mouth and hisses at the orc as she dodges, trying to fly towards the door/window. Vin Diesel Jr. Moonshiner hears the noise and runs toward the door of the blacksmith and shouts, guard. He's gone insane. He's tearing apart his own shop. The orc managed to block the door, which was Arica's escape route. Arica quickly banks away before the orc can grab her. She hisses, making her warning markings flash as she tries to quickly slip past him. Vin Diesel Jr. throws his dagger at the orc. Arica tries to fly out the window, but due to looking back at the orc, flew into the wall instead. Vin Diesel screams, guards, he won't leave me alone. The orc looks back, feeling the dagger in his back, and runs back towards Vin Diesel. Arica looks for a way out as she hovered in the air, chittering nervously. Vin Diesel Jr. Moonshiner runs more, continuing to scream. Guards! Help me! I'll pay you! The orc stops dead in his tracks and falls flat on his face. Vin Diesel Jr. Moonshiner freezes and turns back slowly, his eyes widening in shock. He noticed from the corner of his eye a guard holding a blowgun, letting loose a sigh of relief. Vin Diesel Jr. Moonshiner makes his way over to the guard and shakes the guard's hand excitedly. You saved my life. I just don't understand what happened. I paid him and went to walk out and he exploded. I thought I was going to die. Here, take this for me as thanks and split it between your co-guards. I think it's time I left this town. He hands the guard 10 silver. Arica begins to drag the sword she wanted out of the shop, headed for the gates. Vin Diesel sees her and scoops up the sword, with the mini dragon still clinging to the sword with her teeth, hanging limply. The two leave the town, Vin Diesel grinning from ear to ear. He had gotten away with it again.